Tammy White's first hermit crab came into her life in 7th grade, and she has had hermit crabs ever since for the past 43 years. Using what she learned from her crabs over the years, in April 2005 she opened the Crabbage Patch at her local flea market. Tammy's philosophy was to keep things simple, provide accurate information, and try to mimic what hermit crabs would find in the wild. Some of her early unique products and practices are now commonly found throughout the hermit crab industry. The discovery that hermit crabs like worm castings, developing a moist sand substrate mix for successful molts, and selling shells by opening size, to name just a few. From there, she opened a local retail shop, changed the name to the Hermit Crab Patch, and created an online store which she currently runs with the help of her husband, Kirk. Tammy says she feels very fortunate to be able to have a business that is also her passion for the last 15 years. Please welcome Tammy White.
Meet Me Under the Microscope is an up-close and personal look at my successful attempt in 2009 to breed both the Indonesian blueberry land hermit crab, known as Seta beta lila, and the purple pincher land hermit crab, known as Seta beta clypeatus. I've selected photos and videos that represent the different stages of growth of each species that I hope you will find interesting. In February of 2009, I was given a small colony of what I thought were Cenobita purpureus, known as blueberries, by a friend of mine that had gotten them from Felix Wang. Early one morning, I caught one of my females unexpectedly hatching eggs in her saltwater dish. I transferred the 75 or so live zoe into 2 plastic crabitats that I had filled with saltwater made from Instant Ocean, and hooked up an air pump with air stones to oxygenate the water, and hoped for the best. This first image shows developing eggs of C. lila, the Indonesian blueberry land hermit crab. The dark spots are the eyes of the developing baby hermit crabs, and at this point the eggs appear orange since they aren't that far along yet and are still full of yolk. The eggs of C. lila tend to be larger, more oval in shape, and fewer in number than C. clypeatus eggs. This video clip was taken on day 4. It shows what is now recognized as a C. lila zoea that is in an early stage. According to my notes, I found the first shed exoskeleton just the day before on day 3. Important to note here is the fact that this zoea already shows pleopods visible on the underside of its abdomen. This is typically not found until later stages in many Cenobita zoe species. It also already has a more advanced tail or telson with distinct uropods on day 4. Cenobita variabilis, the Australian land hermit crab, is the only species that I'm aware of that has been officially recognized as having abbreviated larval stages. It has 2 zoeal stages prior to its megalopa stage. From my experience with captive breeding of what has now been recognized as C. lila and not C. purpureus as originally thought, I believe that C. lila is another species that has abbreviated larval stages. In addition to the early pleopods and telson with uropods, by day 9 it has become a megalopa, whereas with C. clypeatus it took 27 days for megalopa to appear. Here is some close-up footage of a C. lila zoea on day 6. I have begun hatching and feeding brine shrimp and have also been experimenting with other foods such as spirulina fish flakes, as you see pictured here. As the spirulina flakes begin to soften and disintegrate, the zoe create negative pressure, swirling the suspended food particles and bringing them toward their mandibles to eat. Other new powdered foods that the zoe were eating when mixed with salt water were phytoplankton, zooplankton, and even powdered egg yolk. Capturing brine shrimp requires a very high energy expenditure, and these other options provide a more passive food source and good variety as well. This image of sea lila's underside gives us the opportunity to see its developing periopods. Later they will become the legs and claws. This zoea is getting close to his molt to Megalopa. You can see that his claws are becoming more prominent, indicating that it won't be long. On day 9 is the final molt to Megalopa. This zoea is already retracting from his exoskeleton. The tail has taken on the shape of a megalopa with its rounded telson. The speed of the following video has been increased so that you can more easily see the changes taking place. Periopods, or legs and claws, are becoming much more prominent as they are beginning to unfold. one final flick of the tail and our new Megalopa is free. This Megalopa is just over 2 weeks old and can be seen wearing a yellow Narita shell with a very red digestive tract. And now at just under 2 months, we have full-fledged baby hermit crabs. And this little one seems to have lost its shell. These 3 Indonesian blueberries are all 11 months old. It's interesting to see how different their sizes are. On this crab, you can see the dark longitudinal streaks located on the surface of the crab's legs and claws. This is one characteristic of sea lilah. Other distinguishing features are dark brown bands found on the underside of their eye stalks, lack of ridges on the outer surface of the large claw, and a brush of setae found on each inner claw. finally, an image of one of my larger males at about 2 years, living up to his Latin name Lila, which means lilac or light purple. And next we have Cenobita clypeatus. In July of 2009, one of my pet crabs began to drop her eggs in the sand, so I moved her to a plastic crab habitat filled with shallow saltwater made with instant ocean. This first video shows her eggs a day before hatching. Eggs have been depleted of yolk and the babies are fully developed. This next video shows her proceeding to hatch the remainder of her eggs. I was much more prepared for this hatching and was able to get photos and video throughout the entire process. I used the same basic process of transferring the Zoe into several crab habitats that were filled with instant ocean saltwater and added air stones as I had with my Indonesian blueberries. Here we see the freshly hatched stage 1 Zoe along with their empty egg casings. Through this next series of clips, you will see a variety of zoea as they progress through the 27 days that it took to become Megalopa. Here we see a now more developed C. clypeatus zoea at stage 3. Comparing this clip to the next, you will begin to see the difference between this zoea's periopods. Periopods are the future walking legs and claws that progressively become more prominent prior to the Megalopa stage. After this next molt here, we see a C. clypeatus stage 5 zoea. Here in stage 5, we see the prominent pleopods on the underside of this zoea. We also see further dropping of his periopods, and if you look closely, you can even almost see the claws themselves. And here we have C. clypeatus at stage 5, and he's dining on a spirulina fish flake. I help him along a little bit at the end, give him a little more to eat. Even under the microscope, I like to hand feed my babies. I added this photograph because I thought it would be very interesting for people to see the difference between a day-old and a 3-week-old zoea. I love this close-up of stage 5 eyes. And here we have some final images of stage 5, just prior to molting to becoming a Megalopa. According to my notes, we have Lily's baby on day 27 as she's entering her final molt to becoming a Megalopa. This video, taken under my compound microscope, shows a much broader view. You'll now see the molt to Megalopa. We've sped up the video and unfortunately had some challenges with lighting. Success! We finally have Megalopa. This is video taken under the compound microscope so that we can again see a broader view of the Megalopa. Their color is really improved due to feeding fish flakes containing astaxanthin. Also, at this stage, we have to really be careful with them. They will cannibalize one another. They will also eat any remaining zoea as well. Here's a more detailed look at Megalopa. Back under the compound microscope, the babies are beginning to look a lot more like hermit crabs and a lot less like Megalopa. They are tucking their abdomens and ready for the protection of their very first shells. 9 days after becoming Megalopa, and while still underwater, I added a very fine sand and shell mix. At that point, all remaining Megalopa took shells. Within the next week, I set up their sea-to-land transition tank, and within the next couple of weeks, all shell-wearing Megalopas had buried and become full-fledged land hermit crabs. Here they are, about 2.5 months old. And at around 11 months. and finally, at close to 11 years old. In conclusion, the method I used was very labor-intensive. I used plastic crab habitats during the larval stages that required frequent water changes and consistent monitoring during feedings to prevent waterfowling and die-off. Trying to do this on a larger scale using this method just didn't seem feasible, and the time investment required just not practical long-term. A Crescell system setup like Mary Akers used seems a much better idea with a higher yield. When all was said and done, I managed to successfully end up with 24 C. lila and 27 C. clypeatus land hermit crabs. I was thrilled to have finally been successful.
Hello, my name is Felix Adi Pramono, or usually you can call me Felix J. Wang. I'm from Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. Now I'm at Petondan Besar Island, one island in the Kepulauan Seribu Regency. I would like to greet all participants of Crab Conference 2021, and at first, I would like to say thank you to all committees of Crab Conference 2021 for appointing me to bring this topic. This is a brief introduction about myself. I'm currently a land hermit crab and seashell shelter in Indonesia. I'm the first person in Indonesia who introduced the proper care of land hermit crabs back in 2006. I wrote the first land hermit crab care book in Indonesian language. My educational background was actually related to tourism and hospitality industry instead of marine biology. And before I started my current business and involved myself deeper into hermit crab world, I was working as a manager for an airline staff and flight attendant training institution. In this session, I would like to share to all of you about how hermit crabs can adapt to what Mother Nature gives to them, in this case, the left-handed or sinistral snail shells. So, sit back and relax, enjoy my presentation. Indonesia is a large country that covers 1,904,569 square kilometers, or approximately 735,358 square mile area. It is stretched between latitude of 11 degrees south up to 6 degrees north and longitudes of 95 degrees east up to 141 degrees east. Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world. There are 5 main islands: Java, Sumatra, Kalimantan or Borneo, Sulawesi or Celebes, and the western half of New Guinea, or called Papua in Indonesian, plus other 13,000 smaller islands. It is no doubt that this country also has the longest coastline compared to other countries in the world if you accumulate or sum up the length of the coastline of all existing islands within Indonesian territory. The equator lies across the archipelago from west to the east. That means Indonesia has year-round sunshine. And due to the tropical climate and 78% humidity, the coastlines are perfect habitat for many land hermit crab species. Currently, there are 7 land hermit crab species that inhabit the Indonesian archipelago, plus the Bircus latro or coconut or rubber crab. That makes total 8 species of land hermit crab in this country. The habitat or living environment of each land hermit crab species may differ, and the shells that they use actually correlates with the existing gastropod species that inhabit the respective area. Now let me show you the pictures of the existing land hermit crab species of Indonesia. The first species is Coenobita brevimanus. This species usually live in the area between 50 meters up to 1 kilometers away from the coastline. Because the adult species lives quite inland or inside the jungle close to the beach, it is quite often if we find this species using giant African land snail species from Achatinidae family or Achatina fulica in Latin. When they are small, Coenobita brevimanus lives quite close to the coastline, and it is quite often when we see them using Nerides or Nericidae family. When they are adult, usually they use giant African snail family or green turban family. The second species is Coenobita cavipes. This species usually lives quite far from the coastline, or approximately between 100 meters up to 1 kilometers away. They prefer areas with plenty vegetation and soil substrate, and it quite makes sense why Coenobita cavipes is normally found wearing land snail shells. Achatina fulica or giant African snail is the most commonly used by Coenobita cavipes in Indonesia. This is a sample of a perfect habitat for Coenobita brevimanus and Coenobita cavipes. As you see over here, so many dried leaves, tree barks, and the soil or humus substrate. And this is also a sample of a pathway for female hermit crabs when they want to release their eggs into the water. As you can see over here, this is the intertidal zone, and this place will always be overflowed by the water during the high tide. And this is also the transition zone for the baby land hermit crabs. Usually after the female hermit crabs release their eggs, they will return to the place where they belong, more inland, over there. The third species is Coenobita lila. This species lives not too far from the coastline or approximately only 1 up to 50 meters away. They usually can be found on dry sandy beach beside mangrove area. The smaller Coenobita lila usually wears Babylon top shell or small Turbinidae family such as brown turban or Turbopruneus, while the larger ones are commonly found wearing spiral Melongina or Volegalia cochlidium or giant African snail shell. The fourth species is the popular strawberry land hermit crab or Coenobita perlatus. This species mainly inhabit beaches with shallow intertidal zone that may have some pools between the rocks. Since one of their habits is soaking themselves and crawling in the shallow salt water to replenish the shell water and to remove the mites inside the shell. The baby strawberries usually live closer to the coastline that makes many of them wearing small Nerides, while the bigger ones usually move more inland. It is quite common that we encounter Coenobita perlatus wearing green turban shells because they live quite adjacent to the Turbinidae habitat, which is rocky shallow intertidal pools on the beach. They usually find empty or dead green turban snail shell when they venture the shallow intertidal pools to bathe themselves. The fifth and sixth species are Coenobita pseudorugosus and Coenobita rugosus. These two species live side by side on sandy beaches. The living environment is more or less similar to Coenobita lila's habitat. The most commonly used shells are from Turbinidae and Nericidae family. This is a sample of intertidal zone that serve for transition zone for baby land hermit crabs. And in this area, there are many mollusks. For example, over here is Nereid family. And this mollusk provides sufficient shells for baby land hermit crabs after they leave the megalopa stage. And it's no wonder then when we see small or baby land hermit crabs, especially from Genobita rugosus species, most of them wearing Nereid shells. The seventh species is Genobita violacens. This species usually lives near mangrove forests, and the surrounding environment may be quite damp or muddy, or along the bank of river estuary. This species can be found wearing various snail shells, either land, freshwater, or marine snail shells. Achatina fulica or giant African snail shell is also popular among these species. Indonesia is a country rich of biodiversity. There are thousands of mollusks or gastropod species that have been identified in Indonesian territory, and yet still more species to be identified. So far, marine gastropods that inhabit Indonesian waters are right-handed or dextral species. And many land hermit crabs are actually accustomed to wear the right-hand coiled snail shells. Perhaps more than 90% of the existing land hermit crabs in the world have never used any left-handed shells. After megalopa stage, most of them use the right-handed micromarine snail shells. And when they grow bigger, they will use the right-handed shells as well, because that's what Mother Nature provides in their habitat. But there will be a different story when in a particular place there is insufficiency of medium and large normal or right-handed coiled mollusk, as we know that the amount and type of gastropods are not equally distributed on each island or beach, even if they are in the same province or state. In this session, I'm going to share some anomalies on several islands around Java, where hermit crabs are accustomed to wear left-handed or sinistral land snail shells. I'm going to bring you to Seribu Islands, a group of atolls and small islands located in the northwest of Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. In this topic, I pick 5 islands out of approximately 350 islands: Bidadari Island, Untung Jawa Island, Tidung Besar Island, Melintang Kecil Island, and Putri Barat Island. Bidadari and Untung Jawa Islands are located quite close to Java as the main island. Tidung Besar Island are a little bit further to the northwest. On these 3 islands, we can find mangrove areas. Marine snails such as giant mangrove whelk or Terebralia palustris and several other snails from Potamididae family can be easily found around those islands. Due to the proximity to Java Island, the giant African snail or Achatina fulica, as well as spiral melongina marine snail Volegalia coclidium, also dominating the land and the shallow water of those islands. Therefore, those 3 species are the most commonly used by land hermit crabs who live on those islands. And on those 3 islands, the predominant species is Genobita violacens. The other 2 islands I'm going to discuss in these sessions are Melintang Kecil and Putri Barat Islands, which are located approximately 70 kilometers northwest of Jakarta. The gastropod species that inhabit the vicinity of those islands are completely different from those who inhabit the land and waters around Bidadari, Untung Jawa, and Tidung Besar Island. On those 2 islands, we cannot find giant African snails on the vegetations. Instead, we can only find Amphidromus palaceus land snail, and all of them have left-hand coiled shells. On these islands, we can encounter three species of land hermit crabs, Cenobita brevimanus, Cenobita cavipes, Cenobita rugosus. The Cenobita brevimanus and Cenobita cavipes are dominating the inner part of the island. We may also occasionally see Cenobita violaceans, Cenobita lila, and Cenobita pseudorugosus, but in very small population compared to those previously mentioned species. Let's now discuss about the three dominating species on Melintang Kecil and Putri Barat Island. The first one is Cenobita brevimanus. The small Cenobita brevimanus usually wear small turbo intercostalis or turbopetholatus shells that can be found scattered on the beach. They may also shells from other families, such as moon snails or Natichidae family, or bonnet snails or Cassidae family. When they reach medium size, they start to wear the left-handed Amphidromus palaceus shell. A few of them don't grow bigger and stay in the Amphidromus palaceus shell from molting to molting phases. That lets the right pincer grow as big as the left one, or even they may have bigger right pincer than the left pincer. And they use the right pincer to close the shell aperture when they retract into the shell. Most of the Cenobita brevimanus that grow beyond medium size will finally leave the left-handed Amphidromus palaceus shell and start to wear garbage shells such as plastic bottle, plastic caps, eggshell, or empty food cans. They are not so lucky as their cousins who live in the southern part of Sumatra and Java, where the shells from Turbinidae family can be easily found. A few amount of big-sized Cenobita brevimanus are lucky enough to find less comfortable shells such as melon or baller shell or volute family, or sometimes also top shell or mother of pearl shell. The second species is Cenobita cavipes. Small Cenobita cavipes wear various seashells that they can find on the beach. When they reach medium size, they start to wear the left-handed Amphidromus palaceus shell. All of the Cenobita cavipes on those islands never grow beyond medium size, and 100% of them wear sinistral or left-handed Amphidromus palaceus shell that can be easily found inside the jungle of those islands. The third predominating species on Melintang Kecil and Putri Barat Island is Cenobita rugosus. Nothing special about Cenobita rugosus in that area. They normally wear seashells that are also commonly used by small Cenobita brevimanus. They sometimes shelter together with Cenobita lila or Cenobita pseudorugosus on those islands. And either Cenobita rugosus, Cenobita lila, and Cenobita pseudorugosus over there never grow beyond small size, and it is a rare occasion to encounter Cenobita lila or Cenobita pseudorugosus on those islands. It seems that all those three species on Melintang Kecil and Putri Barat Island are so isolated for thousands of years. The female hermit crabs lay eggs on the beaches, and it seems that most of the larvae also return to those islands. Especially for Cenobita cavipes, they have no choices of shell to wear besides the left-handed land snail shells. And it is actually quite unique because when I tried to offer them normal or right-handed empty shells at their size with approximately similar weight, they showed no interest to try. I would also like to share two pictures of Cenobita rugosus that I had obtained from Enggano Island, a small island in the Indian Ocean several miles from Sumatra's western coast. Guinea rugosus species can be found abundantly throughout the island, as well as Guinea brevimanus and Guinea violacens. There are one sinistral land snail species named Amphidromus ganoensis, which is typical to that island. But when I got hermit crabs from that island, only a few percent of the hermit crabs wearing sinistral land snail shells. The reason is because there are plentiful normal or right-handed seashells on the coast of that island. There are two samples of Guinea rugosus I show here. One of them seems have been using sinistral land snail shell for a long period that the right pincer has grown as big as the left pincer. And such right pincer serves as the BP to close the shell cavity when the hermit crab retracts into the shell. The other hermit crab still has smaller right pincer compared to the left one. Some individuals are actually quite adaptable to sinistral land snail shells. Some Genopita perlatus or Genopita pseudorugosus are willing to try some sinistral land snail shells from Amphidromus species that I offer to them. But it is indeed restricted to some individuals. Based on my observation, compared to other species that are not familiar with sinistral or left-handed shells, Genopita perlatus tends to try various kinds of shells that they are not accustomed to wear in their natural habitat. Sometimes, out of 100 strawberry land hermit crabs, there are about 10 up to 15 hermit crabs that tries to use sinistral land snail shells that I offer. Thank you very much for watching my presentation. Let us love our hermit crabs and give proper care for them. And please stay healthy. Thank you and see you next time.
Anna Keel was first introduced to land hermit crabs back in the early 1990s, when knowledge of their husbandry wasn't what it is today. That first lone crab left an imprint on her psyche, which is why she now dedicates so much of her time to the land hermit crab adoption program. Anna and her team are responsible for 613 crabs finding their way to new homes in just the last year. In the process, they have also educated more owners than she can count. She maintains 3 active hermit crab colonies comprised of 5 different tanks, as well as chameleons, dragons, and many other exotic animals currently in her care. Please welcome Anna Keel.
Welcome to Behind the Scenes with the Land Hermit Crab Adoption Program. I am your host, Anna, and I am going to take you on a tour of our program. So first thing, we're going to look over our main page on our website where you would go to either apply to rehome, adopt, foster, or become a transportation assistant. And if you keep scrolling past the adopter link, you will see that it lists our minimum care standards. You must meet these requirements, otherwise we can't approve your application, but we will work with you to get you there. We want you to be a successful adopter. We want you to be prepared for the long term to care for your crabs. They can live for 40 plus years, so we try to provide all the assistance and information we can to prepare you. If you scroll down a little past this picture, you will see that our listings are on a map. We have many adopters, some outside of the United States and Canada. We don't have very many in Canada or outside of the US, but we are working to expand that. And we would love to have you if you would like to apply. We're always needing more people to be adopters, to foster, or to assist in transportation. It is all very useful to us. Even if you can only adopt one crab, that is still useful for us. As you can see, our adopters are in the green and our adoptees are in the blue. All right, we're going to move on to the adopter application. So this application is separate from the one that you would fill out for captive raised babies. We keep that information separate for various reasons. So if you want to apply for babies, you will need to apply with a separate link. If you can't find that link, we will be happy to provide that to you. Just email us, ask in our main Facebook group, and we can send you that information no problem. We're happy to help you. All right, and then if you go down a little bit, it goes over our minimum care requirements again, and then right below that, we talk about our adoption group. So our program got really big over the last couple of years, and it was manageable for just, a couple of people doing it, but now we needed to create a way to expedite that process. So we created a Facebook group. It is called the Lycos Adoption Academy, and only our adopter applicants can join that group. We try to keep that group as private as possible, and we only add adopters who have applications with us. So if you're trying to join our group and you don't have an application with us, you won't be allowed entry. We have a wonderful group of mentors in there who are happy to help you to, set up your tank correctly, make the adjustments you need, and to approve your application. When you go in the group, you will see that there is an outline of our minimum care standards once more. It goes into a little bit more detail with various links from our website. And then once you go through that, you would then make your post. We do request that you include this information on your post: your name, your email address, both things tie your application to you, your tank size, how many crabs you have. Those are both important for how many crabs you can take in. And then we also ask that you please describe your tank setup. This is important because sometimes we are not able to see everything that is going on with the tank. Like for an example, what products did you use to make the substrate? We look for a 5-to-1 ratio of play sand and coca fiber. Sometimes people join and they have other things like calcium mixed in, oyster shells, and just all kinds of stuff. And when that happens, we will request that you swap out your substrate because we want all of our adopters to have the proper substrate. Once again, that is a 5-to-1 ratio of play sand and coca fiber. And then we also ask what products were used to make the water for the pools. Now, we're not there when you make the water, so we just want to make sure that you are using the correct products. For an example, Prime and Instant Ocean. Instant Ocean is a marine grade saltwater product, and Prime is a water conditioner that removes everything that we need it to. Very great products. I suggest you to get them if you don't already. I have been using them for years and I haven't had any issues with it. And right below that, you will see if you don't have Facebook, you can email pictures and the above information to us. Even if you have Facebook and you choose you don't want to go through the group, that's completely okay. We just want you to know that sometimes it might take us longer to reply to your emails because our main function in email is to coordinate adoptions. Over the years, we have gotten almost 2,000 applications for adopters and almost 2,000 applications for adoptees. That is a lot of people we're working with. So continued communication helps us keep things moving. All right, now we're going to go over what is requested when you fill out the application. So we want your email address. Obviously, that ties your email to you in your application. And then we ask what you're interested in becoming, either an adopter, foster, transportation assistant, and recently we added another option for those who want to join um, either our group or to email us, and we will help you make the proper adjustments to your tank. You don't have to want to adopt to do that. Just take into consideration that's not our main purpose, but we are happy to help you because we want you to be a successful crab keeper. We want you to have all the proper information to do what you need to make sure your crabs are thriving and not just surviving. There's a major difference there. You want your crabs to thrive, not just survive. And then we also ask your name, so, we have that to be able to send with your contact information when we connect you with an adoptee. We have another space for you to enter your email address. Sometimes people accidentally put the email address incorrectly, so we're able to catch that when we ask it more than once. Your age is also important. We do require parental consent, which is outlined above the application. We just want to make sure if you're under 18 years old that you get consent from your parents so you're not, getting in trouble for bringing home some crabs that your parents didn't know about. That's important for us. And sometimes we will communicate with the child and the parent so both knows what's going on in the adoption process. Or sometimes we might just talk to the parent because that's what the parent prefers and the parent might have filled out the application in the child's name. That's completely okay too. Then we ask for your zip code, city, and state. This helps us list your application where you live. So make sure to include all of that information so we can put you on the map in the correct spot. We do use Google Maps to put up our listings. So if you only give zip code, sometimes the map will select somewhere with the same zip code or similar zip code, but not where you live. So that's where the city and state comes in handy. And then we ask how many miles are you willing to travel to pick up adoptees. This is something we list on your map marker so adoptees know, okay, this person isn't willing to travel as far as I am to them. Maybe they'll meet halfway, and that's a perfectly acceptable thing for them to ask, but at least they know ahead of time that this person isn't willing to travel as far. How many crabs do you currently have? Once again, that information is important so we can tell how many crabs you can take in. And then right below that, there's more information for that reason. What size are your crabs? Like we discussed, smaller crabs can get away with less amount of space. Larger crabs are going to need 10 to 15 plus gallons each. And how big is your tank? That also goes into how many crabs you can take in. Space requirement is very important. Otherwise, there are some issues that you can run into if you are overcrowded. And then briefly describe your crab habitat. That's also so we can know what is involved with your tank that we can't see, or maybe, something we would have looked over. We'll read that over when we're talking with you. And then right below that, you will see we ask, are you going to join the group or are you going to email? If you change your mind after filling out the application and you decide you'd rather go through email, that's okay. If you're already in the group and you decide you don't want to do it through the group, email us, leave the group. We won't be mad. We want you to get approved. We want to help you. We want you to be successful. We want the best for the crabs listed with us and for our adopters. And then social media link. It's not really important, but if we can't reach you through email, that gives us the option to be able to message you either through, Facebook, Instagram, or whatever. We just want to be able to reach out if we can't get a hold of you. Alright, now we're going to move on to the adoptee application. This is for listing your crabs for adoption. So we do require that crabs are free through our program. If you want to charge for supplies or the tank, you need to arrange that prior to the adopter coming to pick up the crabs. So the first thing we ask is your email address. This again ties you to your application. We ask if you're 18 years old, and again, we require parental consent if you are not. Please include your contact information, including your email address so we can follow up with you, or if you are under 18 or still live with your parents, provide their contact information. Again, this goes into parental consent. We like to be transparent with the children and parents within our program. We want to be able to communicate with both parties so everybody knows what's going on. Where are you located? City, state, zip. Like I said, with the adopter application, all three of those are important so we can make sure to place you in the correct place on our map. How many crabs do you need to rehome? That will be listed on your map marker so adopters know how many crabs this person needs to rehome. Now, with larger number of crabs, you need to understand that sometimes we cannot keep groups together because we just don't have the adopter with the resources willing to take in that many crabs. Like their tank can't fit that many crabs, otherwise they'd be overcrowded. But if you are rehoming them with your tank and you think you have enough space in your tank or in that tank and between the adopter's tank, go right ahead. But once again, the crabs that are rehomed through us have to be free. But if you want to charge for the tank itself, arrange that prior to meeting. Let them know right away so you're both being transparent through the process. And then what size are your hermit crabs? Now, a lot of the times people rehoming crabs are unsure of what size their crabs are. And that's okay. It's hard to tell through photos what size a crab is. So we like to make sure adopters are prepared for accidentally ending up with larger crabs. And then what species are your hermit crabs? Okay, so again, adoptees are they just don't know what species they have. And I invite them to email us pictures of their crabs so we can identify that for them. They don't always email pictures, and you'll see on the map marker it won't be listed, and that's fine. Most of the time it's a purple pincher, but sometimes people are particularly looking for exotics, so sometimes adoptees might get messages asking, hey, can you send me some pictures of your crab? I'm looking for X species. And that's okay to do too. Are you willing to pay for overnight shipping? So let's talk about shipping. I prefer not to have crabs shipped. I prefer to get crabs rehomed locally. Shipping crabs can be hard on the crabs, especially when they're coming from not ideal conditions, and that just puts more stress on them, and shipping a already stressed out and sick crab can be a fatal situation and just all around really sad. So that is an option that we do as a last resort situation, and even then we try to pick an adopter that is closest and able to take in that particular situation. And then, are you willing to pay for it? I mean, I don't usually list this because, like I said, I usually get crabs rehomed locally, but this information still stays within your application file just in case that is an option we have to go with. And then, do you have supplies that come with the hermit crabs? So, sometimes adoptees think they have the correct type of supplies that will make that'll be useful for the adopter. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you end up with things that are actually toxic for your hermit crabs. Um, like, for an example, pellet food. It contains fish meal, which is, in the long run, not something good for your hermit crabs. If you end up with a product through an adoption that you're unsure of, just post it up in the main group, include a picture of the ingredients, and someone will be happy to help you. If you're not in our main group, email it to us and we'll be happy to help you and identify whether or not that product is okay to use or not. And then, are you willing to travel and within a reasonable distance to deliver your hermit crabs? So that is something I always list on the map markers. Sometimes adoptees aren't able to travel to get their crabs rehomed, and I will list that this adoptee would need the adopter to come to them as traveling isn't an option for them at this time. And then other times when they say yes, I will put they are willing to travel within reason. Um, Sometimes people are willing to travel beyond what you think is within reason. Sometimes adopters are willing to meet halfway or to go on a little road trip to pick up a crab. I mean, we love our crabs, so why not? um, do any of your hermit crabs show signs of illness? So, we ask this in case it is obviously visible to someone rehoming that the crab is having some sort of issue, like scabs, crusty wounds, mites, spots on the exoskeleton. If it's a serious issue, I will try my best to get a crab rehomed to an experienced adopter or foster parent. Like, for an example, we have two people in Florida who are amazing people who do such a great job at fostering crabs, rehabbing them, and rehoming them. I really appreciate their help in Florida. Crabs are bought and sold like crazy in Florida, and it's an amazing thing what they do. Both fosters have helped tremendously with our program. Um, I can't thank them enough. I can't thank any of you enough for, helping with this program and being able to make this possible. Last year alone, we were able to get 613 crabs rehomed. I don't have the statistic on how many adopters we got approved. That is something I am going to start tracking because I think that information would be interesting. And who knows, maybe next year I'll do another one of these presentations and I can include that. I might try to figure it out after I do this, so I might be able to tell you after the presentation. I'm sorry I don't have that information off the top of my head right now, but that's not the main purpose of this presentation. So if you go to the last box on the adoptee application, we have a portion for additional comments. Sometimes people include how long they've had their crab, what their crab's name is, or other things like favorite foods or whatever they want to let us know about their crabs they're adopting out. All right, we're going to move on to the captive raised baby hermit crab application. So this application is similar to our adopter application with how you need to sign up to get approved. You can either do it through the group or the email. And if you scroll down, we're going to go over the information that we request. We want your email address and your name for the same reason we want your email address and your name for the adopter application. We want to be able to tie you to your application. We ask if you're 18 years or older. Once again, we require parental consent to be transparent with the parent and child in this situation. Your cell phone number, the cell phone number is used for shipping the crabs to you. Some carriers request that there is a phone number listed with that shipment in case something happens. And if you scroll down, we ask what state you live in. That's obviously important for shipping. Um, and when Mary ships the baby crabs, she takes into consideration the weather in her location and the weather in the location that she's shipping to. You don't want to ship when it's too hot or too cold, otherwise, that is amplified within that box. And the baby crab is basically exposed to elements while it's outside of a tank. So we want to make sure that we can ship when they're most comfortable, or as close to that as possible. We haven't had but one casualty during shipping. Um, and that was really sad, but it's still impressive that she has only experienced that once. How long have you kept hermit crabs as pets? So, this doesn't really hurt your chances to become a baby adopter. If you've only had crabs for 1 to 3 months, that's perfectly fine as long as you are set up correctly. We used to have an experience requirement when she first started breeding, but it was on a smaller scale then, so we wanted to make sure to get very experienced adopters the first wave of baby crabs, and they're all doing wonderful. I'm really proud of all our baby adopters and really all of our adopters. I appreciate all of you for making any of this possible. All right, do you agree to pay $50 per baby crab, minimum of two? So Mary likes to ship babies in pairs because, babies are actually crabs. They live in colonies in the wild. They're social creatures, so why wouldn't you want two babies? And plus, they're absolutely adorable. And with more than one, it's possible it might not get flung around as much in the shipping container. She does include moss in that shipping container, so that gives them a bit of a cushion when the package is being shipped. Do you understand that you need to pay for overnight shipping too? So, some people don't understand that they have to pay for that. Buying any exotic animal, you have to pay for shipping, like from any breeder. Um, it's just what it is. You can also meet her within Lockport to adopt your crabs to go there and pick up them. Uh, then you wouldn't be charged the shipping fee, but obviously that might not be something that is convenient for somebody in California or further away. We do not ship crabs overseas, so you have to be within the US to ship crabs or to have crabs shipped to you. Um, So there's a concern there. If we were to ship crabs outside of the United States, it's possible that they might get stuck in customs, which may delay the package. When she ships the crabs, she does overnight shipping, and overnight shipping is basically impossible to do with customs involved. Do you understand that you will have to be home the day the crabs arrive? This is important because if you are not home, it is likely that those crabs within that package will get put back on the shipping truck, which means those crabs will have to go all the way through that driver's route and then will be further exposed to the elements. We don't want that. We want your crabs to arrive when they're supposed to. So definitely make sure you are home when they're supposed to arrive, and that way you can enjoy the day with your new baby crabs. And then we ask, what groups or forums do you use for your crab care information? This isn't going to hurt your chances of adopting babies. We just want to know more information about you. And then again, it asks for like further information about your username on a forum or whatever method you use to search proper husbandry. And then, do you have Facebook? It says, please join our adoption group to get your application approved quicker. Once again, this is just like a regular adopter application. We request that to help expedite the process of your application. All right, so that goes over our adoption program. We are always happy to help, and we thank you for making our adoption program possible. This wouldn't be possible without you and all the amazing people who volunteer their time to help with our program. We appreciate it.
Jessie Stone Road has been keeping land hermit crabs since July of 2017. She got her first crab at No Balls Amusement Park in Pennsylvania because her husband joked about it. She was desperate for a pet to take care of, and since her husband is allergic to every fuzzy animal except for dogs, she had to get creative. Before purchasing the crab, she did some basic research for the tank and thought, I can do this. Then hermit crabs became an obsession and an awesome hobby. She has learned a lot within the short time she's had them, and is now a moderator for the Land Hermit Crab Owners Society and the Crabby Hermit. She currently has 4 crabs in a 75-gallon tank with a topper, all purple pinchers. Her first crab, Leo da Pinchi, is still doing well, along with his friend, Pincho Picasso, who came from a pet store before she learned to adopt instead of shop. She then rescued Momo from her chiropractor, and her littlest crab, Flopsy, is one of the captive bred babies she was approved to adopt. Jessie is so happy to have found this hobby group and enjoys helping to advocate for better care and kinder treatment of land hermit crabs. Please welcome Jessie Stone Road.
Hi everyone, and welcome to CrabCon. With the help of a friend, I'm going to be talking about a few things. First topic is going to be about the nutritional needs of hermit crabs, and then I can show you how to make a meal plan with that nutritional knowledge to ensure your crabby friends are getting all the nutrients needed to be happy, healthy hermit crabs. The last part of our time together is going to show you one of the many ways to store all those dehydrated food mixes that we're obsessed with buying. And if you have any questions while the presentation is running, feel free to type them into the chat and I'll do my best to answer you all. But before we get into everything, introductions need to be made. Here's my friend, Shelly.
Hi everyone! And thank you, Jessie, for bringing me to CrabCon. I want to thank everyone for joining today to learn more about what we need to eat so that other crabs like me can thrive and not just survive. So where are we going to start, Jessie?
I think the best place to start is at the beginning with a little basic information. There are 11 main nutritional groups that need to be fed. Proteins, including meat.
Oh, I love that one!
Shelly, will you please let me finish before you start being crazy? Now, where was I? So there's proteins, including meat, nuts, veggies, fruits, seeds, and grains. And then there's foraged, anthocyanins, fat sources, supplements, beta-carotene, and then lutein and zeaxanthin. Protein is a very important nutritional group. It helps hermit crabs grow, and feeding plenty of proteins will help prevent cannibalism.
Now may I speak? I want to say something important.
Alright, what do you have to say?
Each time you guys feed us, make sure to have 50% of the meal as proteins, especially meat sources. They're super yummy and extra delicious. Proteins also provide more than just proteins. They can also be a serving of healthy fat source. See, Jessie, it was important.
Good job thinking about that and bringing it up. That is a very important fact, and it's also a good spot to mention the servings needed of each food group. So here's a simple food chart I created to help make it easier for anyone new to the crab life. It shows 50% protein, then the rest of the groups are split up equally because you should try to get as many different nutrients into each feeding as possible. It's a great thing that a lot of those dehydrated food mixes that our approved sellers make cross over multiple food groups and makes feeding this easy. Chitin is another important nutrient, which is part of the supplements group. It helps strengthen their exoskeleton, and examples include their own shed exo and shed exos of cicadas, snakes, and similar animals. But be sure to remember that animals should not be medicated or ill. Other surprising examples of chitin are mushrooms, bananas, and kiwis.
It's a good idea to keep in mind some of the examples of chitin because in emergency situations, if you find one of us that seems to not finish hardening up after a molt, you can feed me some of these helpful items.
Exactly, Shelley. Anyone who keeps hermit crabs will know surprises happen, and it's important to remember a few little things in case of those surprises.
Oh yay, a pop quiz! How this works is I will ask the question and start a timer for 10 seconds. If you know the answer, just type it in the chat and I'll reveal the answer. Question 1. How much of a hermit crab's daily diet should be protein? A, 32%, B, 50%, C, 90%, or D, 74%? If you answered B, 50%, you are correct!
The following few things are random pieces of information that are important to remember. First little tidbit is about dairy. There isn't really much research about if dairy is helpful or harmful to crabs, so it's best to just stay away from it. There are plenty of other sources for calcium, such as eggshells, oyster shell, and cuttle bones. Two things that are sort of related that are essential. First is that you must boil any shellfish before feeding. This helps to prevent spreading any diseases to your hermit crabs. The other thing is that dark greens and other foods high in oxalic acid must be cooked as well.
Remember, when cooking any foods, do not use any seasonings.
The next piece of knowledge I want to bring up is how to get the most out of some nutrients. There are some vitamins like A, D, E, and K that need to be fed in conjunction with healthy fat sources for maximum nutrient absorption. For example, food mixes that are plant-based are great and full of wonderful nutrients that help hermit crabs thrive. But they will get the most out of those nutrients when it's fed with a little bit of fish, fish skins, virgin oils, etc. at the same time.
Try not to think about it too hard, though. We pretty well understand our bodies and which nutrients we're lacking. But since we cannot talk to you, with the exception of me, please provide as many different nutrients as possible for feeding. Pop quiz! Why do you need to cook shellfish before serving? A. Prevent smells in the tank. B. Because if it's raw Gordon Ramsay will throw it in the trash and make it do it again. C. Prevent spreading diseases. Or D. None of the above. If you answered C, prevent spreading diseases, you are correct! Woo!
Okay, so the last bit of material for nutritional needs that I wanted to bring up is about the commercial foods that are marketed for hermit crabs.
Those pellets are yucky and I don't like them.
Yes, they are, and they're terrible for our friends because of all the additives. The main one being copper sulfate. A lot of those additives will actually alter their molting ability and therefore affect their overall health and growth. So when looking for foods at a pet store or online, please check the ingredients list of the product. Most single ingredient foods are safe, but remember to check the handy dandy safe food list available on crabstreetjournal.org.
Pop quiz! What was my favorite nutritional group? Was it A, supplements, B, fruits, C, anthocyanins, or D, proteins? If you answered D, proteins, you are correct!
So now that part is down, and I hope you found it interesting and helpful.
Thank you guys again for watching and learning about food. I hope to see more of my brothers and sisters thriving on amazing meals. But now I'm tired and need to go to sleep. Bye!
Bye, Shelly. I'll check on you later. Next, I want to show you how I organize all my food mixes to cut down clutter and also keep it organized. Then I'll show you what a lot of people have said is a good idea, and I believe it'll help some of the newbies out there, making sure their crabs are getting all the nutrition needed to thrive until they get the hang of feedings. I know it's been a lifesaver for me. So over here I have my jewelry organizers. These are an absolute blessing to get, especially for people who are like me and don't like having a bunch of baggies everywhere. You can get these at a lot of different stores, like Walmart, Target, dollar stores. I'm sure they even have them at craft stores as well. I like this specific one the most because if I ever want to, I can actually remove these inserts. I'm not going to do it now because there's food in there, but you can remove the inserts and make the spaces larger or smaller depending on what your needs are. And currently, I do have 3 of these. Now, you do want to make sure some of these, I accidentally got this one, it doesn't lock too well. So you'll want to make sure to get ones that lock better, or when you store it, just make sure you have the next heavy thing right on top so you don't spill any food and waste any food. And as you can see, most of those are completely filled. It's seriously an addiction. Now, of course, we all have those few oddball things that don't fit. So I do have the remaining containers and such, and my little feeding spoon in this little basket. This is just really good because there's some bags like this one, or where's it? This salmon one. The pieces are really large, so it just doesn't make sense for me to move everything out of the way just to make space for those. But this is how I do it, and I actually really love most of the approved sellers on our list. You can find that because of one, the obvious. They make safe foods for a great price. If you go out to the grocery store, sometimes you can see that produce isn't all that cheap. And with the little amounts that our hermit crabs eat at one time, sometimes it makes sense to purchase these pre-made mixes just because of the amounts. The other thing that I really love about the approved sellers is most of them have these handy little stickers that you can just peel off of the container that they come in, and then you can tape them, or sometimes this sticky is still good enough, you can tape them on the surface of your jewelry organizers, and then you'll always know which is in which compartment. Now the initial part of organizing is done. We can talk about how to make sure our little buddies are getting everything they need. To give you a little warning, it's a bit of extra work, but it'll be worth it to know you're feeding your hermit crabs exactly what they need. So what I did was I made this list. And I listed out all the foods I have. I did end up grouping them by which store I bought them from, so if my Krabbies really love it, I know where I got it before and I can order it again. With each food mix name, I listed out all the ingredients within that mix, which is super easy because, at least on Etsy, the approved sellers will list out all the items used within the mix, so there's no second guessing if the added things could be harmful. Then, under each mix, I compared it to the nutritional groups listed on Crab Street Journal and typed out what nutrients each one has. This is why I say to people that it's more simple than you think to provide all the nutrients needed, because you can see most of these mixes fall under multiple groups. It does get a little more complicated when you're feeding fresh foods, but you can still apply the same logic for those when deciding what to feed that day. After I made this list, I go to my flour dish template. I only do it in this shape because that's what I have. I actually got these dishes from Mary Acker's store on Etsy, and it's called Earth, Water, Fire Studio, all one word. Anyway, she makes fantastic feeding dishes in the shapes of flowers, pea pods. I think there's a couple that are fish shaped. I might be wrong on that. But anyways, so that's why I made this template in a flower shape. You can easily create your own based on whatever shaped dish you have. I created it in Photoshop. You can use that as well, or something similar. I'm sure creating it in Paint wouldn't even be that hard. Then comes the real thinking. After deciding what dish you want to use, you have to try to choose which foods to put in together to create the full, or as full as possible, food pie chart. To give a visual representation of how I think it through, I put together this Excel sheet, splitting out those individual nutritional groups and putting the names of the food under the correct title. I then just started with the proteins, since there should be 50% of the total meal consisting of that nutrient, and split them out until none were left. You can see I also put the numbered meal as to when I would feed that food. I then looked under each group and the foods that overlap. I put the same number so it made it easier to track what food I hadn't used yet and which dishes needed more of one nutrient or another. Of course, I only did this to help show you my thought process, and you do not have to do it this way. This is just what works for my organizational brain. Then, once you get done with all of that, you can make it pretty like me and color the template or whatever is best for you. I've seen some people make it like a food diary. I've seen some who use a whiteboard. Again, this is what's most helpful for me. If you have a better way, then by all means, go ahead and do it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining, and I really hope all this helps you and makes life easier, at least when it comes to feeding your little crabbies. Have an awesome day, and enjoy the rest of CrabCon!
Rita Clemens is a moderator and local rep for LHCOS. She's been keeping crabs for 3 years now, after starting, like so many of us did, buying from a terrible beach shop. After finding LHCOS, she corrected all the terrible things she'd subjected her hermit crabs to, and they're all quite happy and healthy now. She and her husband recently moved to the Jersey Shore, where she hopes to increase awareness for proper hermit crab care. Please welcome Rita Clemens.
Hey everyone, welcome to CrabCon 2021. Gonna pause for applause here. Applause, applause. So, I'm so excited to join this amazing panel of speakers, and I'd like to send my personal thanks to Mary Akers, or Mother Mary as I call her, for all the work that went into bringing this thing together. There are a lot of other elves working furiously in the background to get things done perfectly, so let's reach out and show them how much we appreciate this opportunity to learn. And we're going to learn a lot over the next couple of days. It's my job right now to help you find ways to enhance your crab habitat and crab keeping experience for as little money as possible. So we're going to take a little stroll through my local Dollar Tree now. Keep in mind, not all dollar stores are created equal, and neither are all Dollar Tree stores. If you're lucky enough to live near a huge, more modern Dollar Tree, you're going to find a lot more items, and you're going to make me a little jealous. But what I really hope to do today is to give you a bit of a different eye as you walk through the dollar store for things that just might come in handy. You might even see some things that I missed. So get your notepad ready and let's go shopping. Here we are in the beginning of every Dollar Tree store, is whatever that season is. You're loaded up with it there. Yay, happy birthday, America. Coming up on some fake flowers, always good for color for the crab habitat. Stick them behind something or whatever. Just be careful there's no like wire sticking out and no glitter. We don't want any of that inside the crab habitat. But these are really great looking flowers. In the kitchen, get yourself some scissors, get some measuring cups coming up, and measuring spoons. Instant Ocean, am I right? You've always got to measure your Instant Ocean. Other things here, spoons, if you need to reach in and you don't want to touch things. A lot of people don't like to reach in their crab habitat. This is my favorite little thing, the handle guy. Oh, I'm having trouble. Oh, get out. Okay. With the handle on the side, it's easy to scoop things, your sand, your EE, and yes, you caught me putting it back in the wrong place. Shh. Okay. These little tongs here with the black edges on them where you pick things up, those are kind of nice to have around too if you don't like picking your hermit crab up. I know some people just don't. They're afraid they're going to get pinched. I don't advocate for picking them up too often, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Okay, this is if you need to build a pool, this is where you start. These 4 packs, you're going to take 2 of them, bury them in the sand about 3/4 of the way through, and then put the other 2 in and out of those, and you won't disturb what's going on in the substrate if you have any molters or whatever. Those little round ones up there are good for reshelling your hermit crab. Please have one of those on hand and know what to do if you find a naked crab. Look it up, look it up, look it up. That's good for an ISO in case you have a surface molt. If you don't know what to do for a surface molt, repeat after me. Look it up, look it up, look it up. You need to know how to do these things so if they come up, you're not in a panic. You will already know what to do. And we're going to spin around here, and if you ever need to dry out sand or EE or substrate, you want to do it in these great big aluminum tins. Put a cookie sheet underneath to keep it solid. There's some little cups here. It's good if you make your own hermit crab food. There's a little lid there. They're stackable. They're cute. Ding. Spoons. Oh. Yep. I like these little scoopy things. I have them. I don't know what to use them for yet, but I had to have them. We'll find a reason. These spoons over here are just round like a hermit crab. If you should need to get a naked crab out of your tank, or maybe scoop one aside. There's an awful lot of fun stuff in the kids' toy section that you can use if you get creative. animals, stuff. You know, you have to be a little more creative than me, I guess. Make little scenery, no guitars. This is what we're here for. Legos, or the equivalent of, not actual Legos, but all these packages of Legos, all just $1, different colors, and phones. Don't put the phone in the crab habitat, they never pick up. But lots and lots of stuff. If you're good at it, this is where you want to start. It's so cheap. Other pieces, different size pieces, different colors. That's a window set. And there's trees, more windows, more separate kind of pieces that you can use. It's just crazy. There's even a palace? Okay. Bigger pieces that you can use to make bigger things. Look at the size of this. The size of my hand. I know. Good deal. We've got other ones coming up. Little soldier men. Wouldn't that be fun? Fight it out. A little battle inside your crab habitat. Crazy skater dude things. And more Legos. Zombies. That's right. Who doesn't love a good zombie? Fire rescue. More zombies. And the big guys. The big platform pieces that, if you're really good, you could make a whole second level out of these. Just to have some good support underneath. You could have a whole second level. Or zombies. But yeah, those are awesome. We all know how ridiculously hard it is to measure out prime and how it smells. Here's the solution. These little dropper bottles. There's some more containers if you want to make your own food. This is a separate section for containers. This is something I'll show you that I did in one of my tanks instead of for pools to bury 2 and put 2 more inside of those, is to just bury 1 thing and 2 of these smaller ones fit inside. So you could put some stones or some pebbles in there. It's a lot easier to take out to replace the water. If there's a little spillage, it's going right in that thing. Coconut oil, good to have on hand. It's good to mix with some real powdery kind of food. There's not a whole lot in the snack aisle, there just isn't. But these Fruitfuls, take a look at this. Single item. That's what you're always looking for. You can find a lot of things that look like, oh, it's just bananas, or it's just this, or it's just that, and it's got sugar and salt and all sorts of stuff that your crabbies don't need. But these Fruitfuls are nice. There's a lot of stuff in each one of those bags, so I think there's 4 different kinds. Pick up. Have those on hand. This is an example of what not to do with the sugar and all the bad things in there. No, we don't want that. Got another section with flowers. Again, look for wire, look for glitter. You don't want anything like that. These are nice. They're nice to decorate with. These are just little things that you gotta kind of keep an eye on. That's a no-no, dyed moss. When you decorate with things like this, just keep an eye on it. If it looks like it's starting to fall apart, switch it out. There's a little glittery butterfly thing. You don't want anything like that. But anything with jute, I think we've got some jute stuff coming up. You want to pick it up, you want to sniff it. I sniffed it. It's fine. A lot of times it'll smell like petroleum, gasoline. Stay away from any of that stuff. But these were all pretty good. Different sizes, different shapes. And the one thing that everyone's been waiting for is coming up. That greenery is good. There's more jute. Rope. Here we go. The Christmas ornament. A lot of people hang it. Makes a really, really cute moss pit for $1. For $1. I put mine just in the sand. It just sits there in the sand and they spin it around and around and around. Got some of those nice glass beads on the bottom. They're nice to decorate with. There's always little shells, never any that we can actually use for the crabs, but they're nice to decorate with. So we're off to electronics and automotive. And this is the thing everybody asks about. It's the car sunshade. Again, it's $1. It's Dollar Tree, everything's $1. It's so thin, you can cut this to fit whatever size tank you have, whatever size heat mat you have. Tack it up there with clear packing tape, which you can get at the Dollar Tree, by the way. I didn't show you. Zip ties. Where would we be without zip ties? All sizes and shapes, colors, little bitty ones. If you have one of those curiosity cubes and you have to take it apart to put more good stuff on the inside, just get those teeny tiny little zip ties. They're perfect. These little blue containers here on the middle shelf, they're awesome for especially shell shops, but also moss pits. And speaking of moss pits, this was my very first moss pit in my very first hermit crab tank. It's so cute, and it's got little suction cups on the back. That brings back a lot of memories. A lot of memories. Soap dish, perfect for holding on. You can put that way up high because it's got suction cups too. Well, that's it for my little Dollar Tree. I hope you find a Dollar Tree near you and it's bigger than mine. I won't get jealous, I promise. I hope you learned a little something today, that you don't need to look for hermit crab supplies in a pet store. You can go a lot of different places and you don't have to spend a lot of money. Maybe we'll do this again. We'll do it maybe in the group. Like farm to table, we'll start at the store and bring it all home and make something. That sounds like that could be fun. Once again, thank you, Mary Akers, for this opportunity, for bringing us these beautiful captive bred babies. And remember, everybody, adopt, don't shop. We'll see you on the other side. Bye.
Mary Akers first kept hermit crabs when she lived in Florida in the late 1990s. Later, she lived among them in the Turks and Caicos Islands and was thrilled by the sounds that their clacking shells made as they emerged in the evening to begin their nightly forage. Many years later, after she became an empty nester, a friend and fellow pottery enthusiast offered her the last remaining hermit crab that had belonged to their daughter. Strangely drawn to the idea of keeping hermits again, Mary accepted the single crab, but told her husband she would only be temporarily crab-sitting. And isn't the first sign of a rapidly developing obsession denial? She proceeded to research crab care online and found that everything she thought she knew about their care was wrong. She fixed things daily, and her colony grew to 2, and then 4, and then 6, and then more. The tank size grew to a 55-gallon on loan, and then a 120 tall found on Craigslist. By that time, Mary was completely hooked on the beauty of a well-built crabbitat and the strange, mysterious moves of its inhabitants. She read about successful breeding attempts in the HCA forum, and when she discovered that her crab had eggs, she knew she would have to try giving the babies a shot at life. 4 years and 9 attempts later, she has successfully brought more than 1,000 baby hermit crabs to land and created a breeding program that, with the help of Land Hermit Crab Owners Society, is slowly changing the captive-bred hermit crab industry. These simple methods that follow are her attempt to get others successfully breeding land hermit crabs too. Please welcome my mother, best friend, and favorite crab lady, Mary Akers.
Yes, come on, shorty, let's go. Girl, I see you over there in the corner of the dance floor, and I know you're acting shy, looking at the corner of your eyes. So I pick my heart up off the floor, move my feet closer to yours, catch my breath and I say, I'm the one you're looking for. So come on, dance a little dance, take my hand, darling, take a chance. You be my queen, I'll be your king, show you everything that you've been missing, shorty. So come on, dance a little dance, got me in a trance in just one glance. So don't wait no more, I'm me, I'm more, I'm the one you're looking for, shorty. Girl, I see you over there hesitating, deliberating, you keep me waiting on a sign, looking at the corner of your eyes. So I pick my feet up off the floor, move my hips closer to yours, catch my breath and I say, I'm the one you're looking for. So come on, dance a little dance, take my hand, darling, take a chance. You be my queen, I'll be your king, show you everything that you've been missing, shorty. So come on, dance a little dance, got me in a trance in just one glance. So don't wait no more, I'm me, I'm more, I'm the one you're looking for, shorty. I'll be the one you're looking for, shorty. So come on the dance floor and baby show me all your moves, all your grooves, shorty. I got something to prove to you. So come on, take a little chance, got me in a trance in just one glance. So don't wait no more, I'm me, I'm more, I'm the one you're looking for, shorty. So come on, dance a little dance, dance a little dance. Come on, dance a little dance. So come on, dance a little dance, take my hand, darling, take a chance. You be my queen, I'll be your king, show you everything that you've been missing, shorty. So come on, dance a little dance, got me in a trance in just one glance. So don't wait no more, I'm me, I'm more, I'm the one you're looking for, shorty. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie 'em to the ground. You can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at and turn it back around. You can't stop me now. You can't stop me. All the blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Oh, I paid the dearest price. And no shortcuts here for destiny. I'll take the long way proud. Oh, I know what I've earned, and now it's my turn. Lighting the fuse, let it burn. My time is rising, and you can't bring me down. Can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie 'em to the ground. Can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at. Ain't turning back around. Can't stop me. Can't stop me now. No, 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 no. You can't stop me now. This is the calm before the storm. You know what's coming, so be warned. You can't stop me now. You can't stop me now. Though my feet have come too far for you to tie 'em to the ground. Can't stop me now. You can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at. Ain't turning back around. Can't stop me. Oh yeah, you can't stop me now. No, 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 you can't stop me. You can't stop, no, you can't stop me. No, 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 you can't stop me now.
Kelsey Fainer has owned hermit crabs for 5 years, rescuing her first 3 in 2015. Things snowballed quickly from there, and she got to attempt raising Zoe in 2019, getting 1 to land, but not through the first molt. She's hoping to have another chance sometime soon. Kelsey has been avid about animal care since she was young, becoming even more so when she got her first hedgehog in 2018. She has a BS in Fisheries and Wildlife and a background in wildlife rehabilitation. For her day job, she works at the University of Kansas Medical Center caring for research rodents. At home, she currently has 16 hermit crabs, in addition to a house full of other animals: 2 dogs, 2 cats, 2 hedgehogs, 6 rats, a ball python, a lesser tenrec, and a dwarf hamster. Finding new ways to enrich her animals' lives is a favorite passion of hers, and she's thrilled to be able to talk about enrichment for hermit crabs for CrabCon 2020. And we are thrilled to have her. Please welcome Kelsey Fainer.
Hello everyone, my name is Kelsey, and today I'm going to talk about adding toppers to your hermit crab tanks. As a lot of us find out firsthand, hermit crabs often really like to climb once they're healthy and have settled in. We know they need deep substrate so they can molt safely, but it's just as important to provide enough space for them to move above ground and things to do for enrichment. Many of us have seen our own crabs or others climbing on the most unlikely things. Spider crabs climbing upside down are not uncommon. Anything in the tank can be considered fair game by the little daredevils. This is always entertaining to watch, but this also shows how important climbing is as a behavior for hermit crabs. so toppers are great for adding a lot more space for them to climb and explore. I started my crab journey with a 40-gallon tank and 3 crabs, but we know how the story goes. A few upgrades later, I ended up with the 125-gallon tank, and at the beginning of 2020, I decided to upgrade one more time and got 2 large Exoterra terrariums to add to my tank. However, you don't have to wait 5 years, but it's still a good idea before you jump into it to have the basics of crab care mastered. Even if you have other animal experience, hermit crabs are still a bit unique due to their molting behavior and their environmental needs. So you want to have some practice at balancing heat and humidity and maintaining a safe substrate first. When planning to add toppers, it's also important to have a temporary setup for your crabs. Things can go wrong and take longer than planned, so you won't have to stress if they're in good conditions in the tote for a little bit. This also lets you take your time, plan out what you want, and not regret doing this or that or adding something. And trust me, I did that. The 2 usual ways you can add a topper to your tank are with an aquarium or with terrariums. Aquariums are usually more accessible. A lot of people may have started out with a smaller tank and want a use for it after upgrading their crabs. You can also get 10 or 20-gallon tanks cheap during $1-gallon sales at pet stores, or you can find them used on resale sites like Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. So that part's really nice. But they're also less accessible as a topper and may require more modification if you want to open them up. Terrariums are sold as reptile and amphibian enclosures, and they're really nice because they usually have front opening doors, which is why I went with those. But they're not as easily found used in most places, and they're more expensive to get even with sales. I also wanted to touch on another option that I haven't seen used yet, which is PVC vivariums. They're much more common in reptile keeping, and I have one for my ball python. But there are a number of businesses that make and sell them, and some do special orders, so you could get one without a bottom. It's fairly easy to modify these, since you can drill holes to attach things, or to allow cords or tubing out, and attach lights or heating. They're also a lot lighter than glass tanks of a similar size, and they're much less fragile, which are some pretty big pluses. The biggest drawback for them is they're also expensive, and they're not clear all the way around, they're only clear at the doors. So you might have a little harder time finding your hermit crabs. But they would still be an interesting option to explore. And these are a couple of the businesses that I know of or have worked with. I got my ball pythons Viv from Animal Plastics. So back to aquariums. The simplest method for using them is just to turn them upside down and have them cover only part of your base tank. It's not the easiest to work with for decorating, and it can be difficult to remove or maintain. I've also heard of people removing the tank bottoms so that it's open all the way through. But you need to be careful if you try this, because the glass can be kind of difficult to remove. And for either method, you can get custom glass or plexiglass to cover the rest of the base tank and the topper if you do decide to remove the bottom. So I have a couple of really nice examples of aquarium toppers that people have decided to let me use. So here's the first one by Jen Bouton. I hope you said that right. She has a 20-gallon and a 10-gallon stacked on top of a 55-gallon base tank. It looks awesome and gives them a lot of climbing room. I really like all of the mats and stuff to help them climb. The next one is from Amanda Mitchell, who has a 75-gallon base tank with a 20-gallon tall topper. The hammocks are really nice for climbing, and there's a shell shop at the front, which is really great for saving space on the sand. It's a good idea. So then moving on to terrariums, they're pretty easy, in my opinion. The Exoterra ones come with the screen top, and that's removable. So you would take that off, turn it upside down, put it on, and you're all set. A few more things, but still. You do have to be careful with them, as the glass is usually thinner, so they are more fragile. The glass doors are fragile too, so you want to make sure that they're locked in place before you move the tank around. If you can't find one that's the same size as the base tank, you may still need to look at custom top options for the open section, or if you have enough space to work with in the topper, you could also just seal it shut and go in from the topper. I have a few examples of these. They're a little more popular, I think, due to the doors. The first one is from Kate Moffat, who has a 125-gallon base tank with the 50-gallon Exoterra. There's a bunch of ways to get up and climb, which is really nice, and I know my hermit crabs love those coconut hides. Those are perfect for adding hides to a topper if you want. The next is our wonderful mother of crabs, Mary Akers. She has a Exoterra on her 90-gallon tank, and I love the woven hide. And just as a general note, you do have to be careful with adding the grass or the seagrass mats and nets and huts and stuff to tanks, because they can be really prone to molding, but that can work a lot better in a topper because you have them further away from the pools and from the substrate, which are both wet and can cause more issues with that. And last we have Serena Huffman's tank, which is a 25-gallon Exoterra on a 75-gallon base tank. I love all of the extra greenery in the top. She commented that she tried to make it a little bit foresty, which is perfect and gives the crabs lots of spaces to hide, so I'm sure they love that too. And then finally, I wanted to mention that you can also use a topper to connect multiple base tanks. This can be a lot easier to manage in terms of moving tanks, as the big ones get very heavy. My 125-gallon is about 300 pounds empty, so it adds up very quickly. You can really get a custom setup with the space that you're working with by doing this, but it can also be a little more complicated. You have to make sure that you have the environment balanced through all of the tanks, otherwise there's more of a risk of flooding from condensation. And you also have to be really careful about how much weight you're putting in one room on the floor if you do not have the tank set up on a ground floor. So you definitely want to check on that. Anna Keel and Ian Green have a setup like this. They have 3 55-gallon tanks as the base, connected by one 55-gallon and a 29-gallon topper. Anna mentioned that when they set up the first topper, they did have a flood literally overnight due to heavy condensation forming. But when adding the second one, the base tanks were stable beforehand, so no further issues. So that's definitely something to think about. They also did some extra customizing with heat and humidity controls, so that's something else you can research if you're interested. Ian did a presentation on DIY controls last year, so if you missed it, that would be a great thing to check out. And although I'm sure plenty of you have already seen it if you watch Crab Central Station, Darcy and her daughters have a wonderful setup with lots of tanks that are connected, and it really is a good example of how you can set up an entire crab room if you want to and have the space. If you haven't had a chance to see it, there's a video on their YouTube channel that shows the whole setup and gives some more details, so definitely check that out if you have not yet. So, let's get into more of the details, starting with attachment. There are probably other options, but the two I see mentioned most often are either heavy-duty Velcro or Gorilla Tape, or using both of those together. I used Velcro for my tank, so you can see these strips on the base tank here. Then the other strips go on the bottom of the topper, and then you lower that on. So the Velcro plus the weight of the toppers has made mine pretty much rock solid, and it takes some effort from me and one of my partners to pull them back off, so we have to be careful with it. Then, as I mentioned before, there are a number of complications that can happen with toppers, so you're going to want to be prepared to do some problem solving, just in case. It can be more challenging to balance heat and humidity once you expand the space that you're trying to control. And as with crab tanks in general, you want to be really careful moving things around because it's really easy to drop or bang the tanks on something and have them break, and that sucks a lot. So make sure you have help. and be careful if you're cutting glass, of course. And again, as mentioned, it is often more difficult to access the tank in general, either for changing food, maintaining pools, and that kind of thing. And it's an added complication if you do have a problem with your substrate. I managed to hurt myself last year trying to take care of flooded substrate without taking the toppers off by leaning through the doors. Not my best idea. So you want to make sure you plan for that. For temperature and humidity, one of the biggest concerns with this is the risk of condensation and raining, which floods the substrate. This is a big reason it's a good idea to have your crabs in a temporary tote beforehand so that you can make sure the setup is stable before you have crabs digging down in it. You have a larger area of heat, and while it's fine to have a temperature range, it does increase the chance of condensation in the cooler areas. So it's okay to have temperature range, but just make sure that everything is warm enough to stay balanced. And as for humidity, you do have more chance of cracks leaking your humidity, and you may have low humidity for a while after setting up because the new decor is going to absorb moisture. So that's another reason to kind of let the tank stabilize before you put your crabs in. Alright, so next up we have troubleshooting heat issues. With the Exoterras, especially the thinner glass, it does help a lot to insulate them by adding backgrounds. You may still need to add more heat mats for your topper depending on your room temperature, but I had good luck with just adding lots of backgrounds to both of them. It really helped contain the heat, so that will make a big difference. If you do have to add more heat mats, make sure that you double check how much voltage your thermostats and your power outlets can manage. Heat mats are generally pretty low power, but it's a good idea to check just in case. Overloading any of your electrical equipment can increase the risk of a fire. So I do have a space heater that I keep on low next to my tank, which helps keep the front from getting a bunch of condensation on it. So that's another option that you can try. And also keep in mind that if you do add more lighting to your tank, that may affect your temperature as well, depending on what you use. Most LED lights don't give off a lot of heat, but some other kinds can. So while condensation can be a big risk with uneven heating, it's still more likely to have issues with low humidity before adding a topper than with high humidity. You do want to make sure that you check for cracks where the base tank and the topper meet, which is why a lot of people will use the tape to connect the two as well. The Exoterras also have plastic vents at the front, which those can be taped up or left high to help control humidity as well. Or left open, sorry. Weather stripping is also really helpful for creating a tighter seal, and it's pretty cheap. Try to show where I have some on my base tank here. It's kind of hidden underneath the Velcro strip. The little bit there on the top as well was left from when I had a glass lid on and helped keeping that sealed, and I removed that when I put my toppers on. Another big thing that can help with maintaining humidity is to increase your pool size or add filter or bubblers to the pools. This creates more exchange between air and water, so it gets more of the moisture into the air. And as an added benefit, you don't have to change your pools as frequently. You can go down to once a week instead of every other day or every couple days. I think most of the tank safety stuff is fairly common sense, but I wanted to just remind people anyway. I know I am definitely prone to forgetting this stuff sometimes. Make sure you're careful when moving tanks. Again, try to get help if you can. Both make sure you keep your back safe and don't hurt yourself. And it really sucks to break a tank, and it can happen so easily from just setting it down wrong or a little bit too hard. So make sure, and also make sure that you always empty your tank before moving it. If you don't have the bottoms fully and evenly supported, any weight in the tank can crack or shatter the glass very easily. And if you're working with the Exoterra tank, make sure you have the doors supported if you have the tank sitting back on its back. I learned that one the hard way. I let a door swing open by accident, and it broke one of the pins holding the door in. I was able to fix it, but just as a heads up. A big piece of the planning ahead is to make sure you can still get to everything you need to. Trust me, it is a huge pain to set everything all up and then realize you can't get your pools out without dumping water everywhere, or you can't reach your food bowls easily. The harder you make maintenance, the more frustrated you'll get with your topper instead of being able to enjoy it. And of course, don't forget to try and keep one step ahead of the little bulldozers, and try to make sure you have cords covered, make sure they can't pull the bubbler out of the pool or block up the filter, and so on. They are very good at getting themselves into trouble sometimes. So, let's talk about the fun part, which is decorating. Yay! So, some other options for store-bought backgrounds include a crate light diffuser, which is getting a lot more popular, I've noticed, for making tank structures. And I've also seen a few people use it as a background so that they can attach other things to it. You can find it at home improvement stores, and it's sold on Amazon as well. And if you buy a new Exoterra, they come with a foam background, so you can either use just that or you can modify it. Crabs will totally tear it up, but it's not harmful. They usually won't eat it, so it just makes a little bit of a mess. I did modify one of the backgrounds that came with my Exoterras by painting silicone on and then adding dry coconut fiber. I also cut away sections of the foam and siliconed in cork rounds and pieces for climbing, and I highly recommend that. I always find at least one crab hanging out on the cork, so they really like that. There's almost always somebody where they have that little cartoon crab. It's a favorite spot. And then there's also the option of making your own foam background. And I've done that a couple of times, and it's definitely a learning experience. I got the styrofoam panels from home improvement stores in the insulation section. I cut ledges and then used toothpicks to put them in place. And then you can get great stuffed pond spray foam to add more detail and build more structures. I used a pond and stone one, but it's the one used most for aquariums. They have a couple different kinds. Then once you have your structures built and carved, you can add silicone and whatever substrate you want to cover it with. I used lava rock for my first one, which was quite bulky. And then when I made my new one this year, I used black aquarium sand, and I used some scattered lava rocks for climbing. I do think this one looks nicer, whether that's from experience or just not quite as much bulk from the stones, but it has not been as durable, and I already have a crab that has dug a hole in one shelf, because bulldozers. But yeah, if you do want to try making your own backgrounds, definitely Google for some guides to help you out. They're pretty commonly used for reptile and amphibian setups, so that should give you some more information. Make sure you do double and triple check all of your measurements so that everything fits right. And with the spray foam, go slowly and let it dry as you add layers. It expands a lot, so you probably will want to experiment a little bit at first. Like I said, it's a little bit of a learning curve. And also be careful with it because it's extremely sticky. We still have some stuck on the carpet in the basement from me. And also, please be smarter than me and work in a well-ventilated area when you add the silicone because the fumes are very strong. And a mask can help with that too, and I'm sure we all have plenty of those around still. So another option is using cholla branches to make a wall. Mike Vukoder was the first person I saw who did this, and I loved the idea, so I asked him if I could copy. He cut the branches in half and siliconed them right to the glass wall. I made mine by putting spray foam on a sheet of craft mesh and sticking the cholla pieces into it when it was about half dry. Then I used silicone to add more pieces on top to cover the foam. So you can see both mine and Mike's so that you have a couple different examples. And then there's lots of options for adding permanent support structures for your toppers. Like I said, you can use the egg crate to make shelves. You can also silicone in glass or plexiglass panels, corner shelves, or baskets. I got lucky here, and my base tank already had glass panels siliconed in the middle to help with support for the lids. So I just siliconed some coconut mats on top of them, and they make really nice partial floors for my toppers. One of my favorite things to use, and just one of my favorite tips that I always try to tell people, is using wall corner guards. These are something that have to be siliconed in, and they can't be added with crabs in, so I always kind of feel bad if people don't know about it and kind of wish they had done it before putting their crabs in the tank. They're fairly cheap on Amazon or from home improvement stores. You just drill holes in one side and then silicone the other side to the glass. Let them dry, and they are perfect for hanging all kinds of stuff. They are so much easier than command hooks and suction cups. They can come loose after a while, just if things get brittle from the heat and everything, but they don't come off nearly as easy as the other options I've found. You do need to let them cure for at least a couple of days, so like I said, make sure this is something that you plan on doing before you put your crabs back in. As you can see, I seriously had them all over my tank. I had them all around the top edge of my base tank, and then I also put them around the top edge of both my toppers, and added a strip on the ceiling, which you can see that second red box at the top. And I also added strips to the sides of my forest topper, kind of hiding in the coconut mat. And as you can see, my hermit crabs like them too. I can often find them climbing along them. They kind of use them as little, cliff highways or something. They like to climb around down them to get around. And of course, we add toppers so that crabs can climb. I made a really nice climber by using one of those flexible foam vines, and I wrapped it in sisal rope. The sisal rope makes it much easier for the crabs to climb, especially the bigger crabs, and I was able to mold the vine into a spiral shape to make a way for them to climb into the forest topper. I'm not using it anymore just because it made it a little difficult to get to the food dishes and stuff, but it worked really well, and we found crabs using it multiple times. Of course, there are plenty of other options too, like these rope and wood bridges, which I use a lot of, and I've seen other people use them quite a bit too. And there's handmade bridges from some of our lovely stores, so go check out the expo if you want to buy some of those. As we saw in one of our example tanks, there are store-bought hammocks that can be used. And you can also use crab-safe branches or trail branches from our sellers or from reptile supply sites. Those are really useful too. As we all know, crabs love to hide, and they're experts at it, so coconut hides are a very popular option, and I think at least most of us have at least one of. Cork rounds, like I said, are really well liked too, and mine just love to hide in them or sit on top of them. They can be a little bit harder to find sometimes, but they're getting more common on animal supply sites and at stores. You can also really find them at reptile expos or conventions if you go. And there's baskets and bowls that you can get. Shower baskets are really common, and they're really useful for making moss pits or leaf pits. Honestly, do not discount Nooks and Crannies. They are really an underrated option that crabs seem to like a lot. I often find a lot of mine just kind of wedging themselves between a couple of things and calling it good. So they really like where the Troya wall meets the fake rock wall for that. Just kind of wedge themselves in and go to sleep. And again, just one more reminder, make sure that the little bulldozers do not get into anything important. You can use aquarium air tubing to cover up the cords for lights or filters. I have a light strip inside the tank for a UVB light, which UVB light does not travel through glass, so a light does have to be inside the tank. I wanted to make sure that the plug area was inaccessible so that the crabs wouldn't get hurt or create a fire hazard. So I flattened out a piece of corner guard and used Velcro strips to block the area off, and that has worked really well. And while crabs do just fine surviving falls, make sure you do create some barriers if you have a topper above your pools. You don't want them to cannonball in and create a nice tidal wave or break a glass pool and cause a flood. So hopefully all of that helps you get started with what to plan for and some things to look for and think about when setting up a topper. There are tons of options for decorating and more than one way to set these up, so definitely look around on the groups and the forums and even check out reptile or amphibian websites for some more ideas, because there is just a lot of stuff out there. And they can be a lot of work, but it really is worth it when you see how much your crabs love the extra space. Mine use every bit of both of their toppers, and there's often someone right at the top at 2.5 feet up. And like, these guys climb trees in the wild, so it's not quite the same, but it definitely gives them just some more space to hang out. And of course, do not forget to share pictures if you set up a topper. We all love to admire everyone's beautiful tanks, and get more ideas. There's always somebody that comes up with some great idea that everyone else wants to copy then. So it really helps with making engaging enclosures for our pets. Thank you for joining my presentation, and I hope you enjoyed it.
The Crab Central Station crew, Darcy, Brooke, and Faith Madsen, join us from Central Texas. Crab Central Station started their YouTube channel in 2018 as a family endeavor. Their mission is to bring awareness to hermit crabs, educate proper care, and advocate to bring change to the hermit crab industry. Since starting their YouTube channel, they have made over 50 videos sharing a wide range of educational content, such as basic hermit crab care and other helpful hermit crab information. In the past year, they have grown immensely, reaching hermit crab hobbyists worldwide and helping them along on their hermit crab journey. As they work to advance their mission, Crab Central Station has also decided to contribute to the captive breeding program, lovingly mentored by Mary Akers, as they work to add to the research and knowledge of captive-bred hermit crabs. Crab Central Station would like to thank the Land Hermit Crab Owners Society and the Crab Street Journal, along with Hermit House Breeding. Without your years of research, guidance, and support, they would not be where they are today. The following video is a documentary-style film by Crab Central Station in collaboration with hermit crab experts and captive-bred hermit crab adopters who share their heartfelt stories in hopes that it might inspire others. Please welcome Darcy, Brooke, and Faith Madsen.
Oh look, he's actually turning. Come here, little guy. Where are all your friends? Where are they? My name is Darcy Madsen, and I am a hermit crab hobbyist. I think people would definitely consider me a crazy crab lady, yes, for sure. This is my crab room, and I basically have 700 gallons worth of tanks. I have 4 toppers, 7 actual tanks that line the perimeter of one of the bedrooms in my house. And I have 45 hermit crabs, 6 different species. And basically, this is their house. This is their home. This is where they live. My hermit crab journey began with one of my daughters. We were on a family vacation at Port A, and she saw hermit crabs in the souvenir shop, had her own money, and wanted a couple. So I said, all right, well, let's kind of see what's involved in taking care of them. It's an animal after all. So we spoke with the shop owner, and the directions were very simple. They were not complicated. They were inexpensive. What they needed was pretty much provided right there at the store, and they were not a long-term commitment. And so at the time I thought, this will be great. It's your own money, you're young, this will teach you some responsibility, so sure, yeah, let's get some hermit crabs. Then we took them back to the beach house, and everybody there was kind of playing with them, and we all fell in love with hermit crabs. And so I decided as a teacher, like, I need to have some hermit crabs in my classroom. So the following day we went back to that same store, and I purchased some of my own hermit crabs to bring to my classroom, and that began my hermit crab journey. Early on, when we were really struggling with what, information, which recommendations to follow, and we were often redoing and buying new things, and it was just really it was frustrating, honestly, in the beginning, until we found the Crab Street Journal and all of their wonderful information and files upon files of care guides. And what we truly fell in love with was that that was all research based, from hermit crab keepers that had hermit crabs for decades, from scientists and things, and people like that. So to us it was a no-brainer. Like, this was the recommendations that we wanted to follow. And then we found LICO's Facebook group, and Land Hermit Crab Owner Society was just like, honestly, like, they are some of my really good friends now, because we all share this common interest. We're all maybe a little bit crazy about our crabs, but it's a place that we can go and find a sense of community, a sense of belonging, the support that you need, and that we can just share our journey with each other, no matter where we are, from somebody coming in on day one and needing a lot of help and looking for that recommendation, to somebody who's kept crabs for 20-30 years. Stacey Griffith is 100% the backbone to Crab Street Journal and the Lycos community. Without her driving this passion and desire for change, education, and advocacy, I don't think any of us would be able to do what we're doing. I just think she is such a great leader, and so inspiring and encouraging, that she has a whole troop of thousands of us just ready to take her lead and advocate for hermit crabs.
I am Stacy from the Land Hermit Crab Owner Society. I'm the president of the nonprofit organization. I'm not one of the original founders, but I did take over in approximately 2006, managing the organization, and I'm also the owner of the Crab Street Journal. So back in 1999, when Vanessa and the other founders of Lycos started their hermit crab group on Yahoo, there was just no information out there except the very basic care sheet that FMR gave out. So they just started collaborating and sharing what they knew, and started observing their crabs and sharing notes. Well, this is what I found, and this is what I saw today, and starting to research what, even back then they were researching whatever was available. Some of our files that go back, like our nutrition files, go back to those original days when the original members were doing what research they could in the early days of the internet to better educate themselves about their pets, and then sharing that with other people. That That Yahoo group became the Land Hermit Crab Owners Society as an organization. Then Vanessa wanted to have like an online magazine that was the magazine of the society. And that would be where they would house all of the information they had collected on what worked for them caring for their hermit crabs. And that became the Crab Street Journal. So the Crab Street Journal has always been the online magazine or the flagship site of the organization, and provided everything that we know and believe to be true about proper hermit crab care, free to anybody who comes and wants to read it.
The more we spent researching, the more we spent watching other people that kept hermit crabs for decades, the more we realized that if we found the proper care, they would thrive and they would become really a much more interesting pet to have.
They're so largely overlooked. But I used to do a lot of advocating for dogs and cats, but a lot of people speak up for dogs and cats. And who out there is speaking up for hermit crabs? So somebody needs to speak up for them, and I guess that somebody has come to be me. I think that hermit crabs need to be advocated for because it is very distressing to me that millions of animals die every year for no reason. Millions of hermit crabs die every year just solely because we have not educated the public.
The hermit crab industry currently, simplified, I guess, as best I can, is that you have hermit crabs living their best life out on the beach, and along comes human to collect these hermit crabs. They put them in their bag and store them in the backs of their trucks for a few days so that they can harvest over a couple days time to get the number that they are looking for. Then they take these hermit crabs in a truck, cargo vehicle, sometimes in the hot sun, in these bags without any kind of food or water, and travel days sometimes to get to a holding facility or to a plane that will then ship them overseas or whatever. And so once they get to these holding facilities, they're oftentimes forced out of their natural shells, either by humans pulling them out, cracking their shells, or by a drill press actually putting the live hermit crab under the drill press and cracking them out of their natural shell, and then tossing these naked crabs into a bucket of painted shells and forcing them to choose one, because a hermit crab will die without a shell. So at that point, toxic or not, wet paint or not, a hermit crab's going to do its best to find a shell, if it survives that whole process so far. A lot of times those painted shells are still wet and they might even get painted into them, and that'll be a death sentence as well. After being several days in these holding facilities, then they will package up some burlap sacks full of hermit crabs to be able to ship to beach shops, souvenirs, pet stores, mall kiosks, all these places that we've seen hermit crabs being sold. Again, they are without food, without water, and at this point they're no longer in their natural environment, so they now are without the heat and the humidity that they also need to survive. So they are extremely dehydrated, they are starving, and a lot of them are injured. So they make it to these stores to be sold and are kept in less than ideal conditions most of the time, where they are not given both types of water that they need, given pellets food to eat, which is toxic to them and harmful, usually not given the correct heat or humidity that they need to actually breathe. And so again, they're sitting here in the stores waiting to be purchased in horrible conditions and slowly suffocating and slowly dying. And so by the time they get to you at home, a lot of damage has been done, and a lot of times too much damage to overcome. And millions of hermit crabs die at some point along this process before they ever get to you. So Rizky Pichanto lives in Indonesia and has actually visited one of these holding facilities and can recount his personal feeling and what he saw at these compounds.
The first thing that you noticed was the smell. Yeah, and it was even more pronounced that day because they just had a shipment came in. It was transported in a not so ideal way. Yeah, so the hermit crabs were exposed to the tropical heat, to the midday heat for God knows, So I don't know. Probably more than half of the hermit crabs that came in the shipment were dead. And the first thing I saw when I came into the gate was on my left. There was a pile of like the small Rugosus and Viola, and it was dead. Yeah, like just it was, I think, 3 feet high, the pile. I don't know how many thousands were there lying dead. As I go further in, I saw this concrete vats, and in the middle of the vat, they had this big bucket, and in that big bucket, they just piled up all the dead ones, again 3 feet high. Yeah. It's all, they're all big hermit crabs just lying there dead. Either they all were out of their shells.
If it were dogs and cats that were dying that fast, if people regularly had a dog or cat that died a month after it came home, imagine the outrage, But because it's a little bitty crab that people think is insignificant, it's okay. If we're going to take a wild animal from its perfect wild habitat and hold it captive in our home, it deserves the very best. To be treated like a toy or a plastic piece of nothing that can just be thrown away when you've lost interest in it is really disturbing to me. And conveying that message to children is equally disturbing to me. That because this life is so small, it doesn't matter. I'm not against people keeping them as pets, but so many of them die in the pet trade because the pet trade really is focused on economic gain and not education and proper animal husbandry or conservation of the wild population. So for me, it's about the hermit crabs not dying senselessly for no reason, just because we simply aren't telling them better. And information is free and knowledge is free. There's no reason for a pet store not to give you the information you need about your pet. What do they gain from not telling you the proper way to care for your animal? It doesn't make sense to me. The whole chain does not make any sense to me.
As I became aware of the hermit crab industry, at the time, I didn't even know that all hermit crabs were wild caught. That's really almost unheard of, anymore. Most animals are captive bred. But once I learned of the industry, learned of the plight of the hermit crab, as a hobbyist, there was no way I could, continue to support that type of industry. Every time, I would go to a store and purchase a hermit crab, then that just gives the whole cycle the momentum they need to go out and harvest more and the whole thing, and so that more can be replaced in the store. So I'm not really rescuing any kind of hermit crab from a store. I'm perpetuating that horrible industry. And so, I had to come to the decision that I would not support that and instead look at adopting. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. And, Lycos has a great adoption program. I've adopted hermit crabs through that program. A lot of times you can get healthy crabs because people have been keeping them in great conditions and they just need to rehome them for whatever situation. Also, you can adopt from Facebook Market or Craigslist and that sort of thing. Again, these are crabs who are needing to be rehomed, and if we're not out there looking to get those crabs and bring them to our tanks, they might just drop them in the backyard. I've heard horror stories about that. So put them in the trash, I don't know. But, actively seeking out those types of crabs are also a really good idea. You're not supporting the trade in that way.
I think somebody needs to continue to advocate so that we can really save hermit crabs' lives. Save the wild crabs from being completely wiped out, from being over harvested, simply out of our own ignorance. Over the past several years, many people have made attempts to captive breed in their homes, and there have been small successes over the years. And with each success, the next person to try builds on that a little bit more and builds on that a little bit more. One of the people in recent years who's been the most successful in captive breeding is Mary Akers. Mary Akers is currently the vice president of the Land Hermit Crab Owners Society, but she came into our Facebook group as any other member seeking help for her hermit crabs. I had no idea when Mary joined the group that she was going to be as important as she is, and that she was going to be so important to me realizing my dream of seeing Lycos grow and make a change, and that captive breeding was going to be the step that we needed to really make a change in the pet industry. So she has built on the foundation of others to a point where we really feel like we can make captive breeding a successful venture, and that we can someday change the pet trade. And I never would have expected somebody like Mary would come into my life, but I'm so glad she did.
My name is Mary Akers. I am a hermit crab breeder, which I don't think too many people have said in the past. My background is in science a little bit. I co-founded a marine ecology school in Dominica. I worked for the School for Field Studies in the 90s, which is a study abroad marine program. So I've always been interested in the ocean and animals and what makes the world work, I guess. The breeding program has been evolving ever since I started. I first just wanted to see if I could do it. I couldn't at first, and then I could, and then I succeeded really well. I guess a summary of the breeding process would be, first you hope that the crabs do their part. You spend a lot of time worrying and shining a light and checking for eggs and seeing if they're doing the right thing, being very in tune with their behavior. The females, in my experience, get very restless when they're looking to spawn, so you can kind of check behavior. When I can tell the females are at that stage, I will put them in a bucket that's it's not clear, so they're very, they have one job. I have a rock they can climb out on. I have a really strong bubbler, and no other crabs around. They just have this quiet space to do their spawning safely. And then when they're done, I put them back in their tank and give them a nice treat to eat to reward them. So then you have the Zoe that have to be fed multiple times a day. They go through 5 stages. Each stage is 3 to 5. There's a 3 to 5 window between each stage, 3 days to 5 days. At roughly day 16, they start to make megalopa, which is when they have claws and all their legs and antenna and everything. That's the most difficult molt for them, the most dangerous one. A lot of their structures have to change. So day 16, I move them to a transition tank, which is just about 3 to 4 inches of water, a bigger expanse of water in a bin with a lot of climb out areas for them and a lot of shells. And that water has to be changed, but not as often, just portions of it. And then the rest is up to them. That's the hardest part, is waiting for them to be crabs, to find a shell and tuck their butt inside it and say, I think I'll walk on land now. Let's see what's that like to breathe air. And then that miraculous journey of those. I look at the ramp that I use. That's like 100 miles for those little babies, and I'll see them come out of the water and be like, whew, whew, and they'll just sort of stop. And I usually take a toothpick and I dampen it and I pick up one bloodworm and I just stick it right in front of them, and they're like, oh, okay. and they'll eat, and then they'll keep trudging. I mean, it's just such a journey. It's such a crazy journey. But it's usually about a month to get them to land. So the breeding program is not just about breeding. My crabs can breed all day long, but then what happens with the babies, right? You get them, you put all that time in and all that effort in, and then you have these wonderful babies, hundreds of them perhaps. So I quickly realized that it wasn't just about breeding, it was about adopting them out, finding good homes for them. I'm really struggling with how to get them to homes because I don't want to lower their value. It's really tough because I don't need $50 a crab for them. I love them enough. I would do it for free, but nobody's going to value them like exotic pets unless they pay exotic pet prices.
There are snakes that sell for $20,000. There are spiders that sell for $500. A spider that might live 7 years versus a hermit crab that lives 45 years. Why is his life valued more than the hermit crab? Why is there more information available? People understand that $500 spider needs something special. You better not kill it. But the $7 hermit crab, well, that was a trip to Starbucks.
In order to actually make a difference, to be able to change the horrors of the hermit crab industry, we are going to have to change the way people view hermit crabs. What animal should be labeled a souvenir? It's a living animal. So we have to change the way people view hermit crabs. They are not a throwaway pet.
I think that the pet stores don't value them for what they are because they're wild caught, and they treat them as a unlimited resource that they can just continue to go back and collect over and over again. They pay pennies for them. There's no value on their life. When meanwhile, we're killing them at an alarming rate and wiping out those wild populations. So just getting the information out there about their care, just to get it somewhere near what the other exotic pets are, would be a big step forward to get them seen and respected for the valuable animal that they are, regardless of the price tag that a pet store puts on them.
So in order to do that, we have a great example in the exotic industry. We have snakes and tarantulas and lizards and turtles, and those have all been valued as exotic animals. And with that comes the price. And it's up to us, this hobby, hermit crab hobbyists, this community, to support and be the leaders and be the example in changing that mindset.
The thing that we need to do is educating, slowly educating, getting the word out. But I think the most important thing to do is the breeding, however hard it is, however time consuming and money consuming it is. It's possible. And hopefully, slowly, we can give the crabs some breathing space, the wild crabs, yeah.
And eventually, we get to the point, hopefully, where all the hermit crabs that are for sale are captive bred. Then none are being taken from the wild, and they've been ethically raised. There's no puppy mills. It's not like they're going to go in the backyard and make 1,000 babies. These babies have been lovingly raised from free-swimming, almost microscopic larvae. They've been provided shells every step of their life to go up and size up in a shell. They have been loved. They have been cherished. They are not suffering, and they would love to come to your house to live in your wonderful tanks with your good conditions and be a lifelong friend for you. Adopt babies. That's probably the most direct route to supporting the breeding program. It's this miraculous opportunity
to see a creature from birth, know the date that it was born, and see it grow and have a relationship with it for its entire life. It's visibility that we need. It is sharing the word that we need, and sharing what the babies mean to you. If you have adopted, you have a voice out there to help more crabs, simply by talking about how much you love your babies.
My name is Trisha.
I'm Jackson.
I'm Christine Altman.
My name is Andrea Skin.
My name is Serena Huffman.
And this is Our Adoption Story.
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 And this is our adoption story.
So I just wondered, has anything happened? Are they breeding them in captivity yet? And I did a search, and Mary Akers came up, and I couldn't believe it.
Then of course I came across baby hermit crabs, and I remember being like, what? How? And because I thought you couldn't breed them, and there's somebody who can.
And so I followed her blog a little bit, and I read what she was doing, and it just meant so much to me, and I thought I really want to be part of that.
I saw Mary with the babies. I was amazed. I was like, oh my goodness, somebody did them. And I was just like through the roof. And I didn't know who she was. And I contacted her saying, hey, if you ever want to get rid of some of them, keep me in mind. And so our wildest dreams and fantasies actually came true. And we didn't even think that was possible. And then when we got to New York and we met Mary, and I saw those babies, I just burst out bawling. I mean, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And then Mary started crying, and it was so amazing and so beautiful.
It was overwhelming. There really are no words to explain when you know without a doubt you are looking at the miracle of life. From the tiniest little creature, and I thought I was prepared for how small they were. And it like I said, there's just no words. And then to be in this family of hermit crab enthusiasts, when they say you find your people, you really find your people. And we could all just be in awe of Mary and her amazing abilities. And she was so calm about all of this, like, oh yes, here's all these little miracles, and the rest of us are trying to pick our jaws up off the floor. So it was a once in a lifetime experience for sure.
And we were sitting at the coffee table, and I opened it up. The dog was really excited. He could tell something amazing was happening too. And they were all just so active. It wasn't anything like getting them from the pet store where they're just in their shell, terrified. They were all crawling around on the moss. They were so tiny, like smaller than a marble. And you can see this, they're just so delicate and almost see-through and beautiful and curious. And we all had them, we weren't sure, like, should we hold them or not hold them? But I just couldn't resist. And so we had them crawling all over our hands and our arms, and we were getting acquainted with them and looking at the beautiful shells that they were in.
And opening up the package the first time and just seeing them and just like, holy cow, these things have never had another home outside of the one in Mary's. And just being like, they're in my house and they're going to be mine forever. And like 40 years, if I hopefully live that long. It was just really amazing, just holding them and just going, these are mine, and they were Mary's, and there's only ever been two owners, and they weren't like stolen off some beach somewhere, and they don't know anything other than what Mary showed them and then what I'm going to show them.
Cool to just see the random things like, wow, that's the first time this baby ever did that, because the whole history of the baby from when it was being spawned to taking its shells to coming out, which if you buy a store-bought crab, you have no idea of its history or where it came from.
I like seeing them grow. I like seeing them grow from like such a small size and watching how their color is developing, and when they come up, what kind of shells that they're choosing. It's just fun watching them discover new things.
But one thing that I think is fascinating is they're all born at the same time, all raised the same way, but we have some that are big and some that are still really small. So they're all unique, they're all different, they all have different personalities.
One of my babies is super active and he's out a lot and I see him a lot. Strangely enough, the one I named Bashful is always missing.
The babies, they'll like see them like stumbling everywhere, and they'll be in weird spots and doing weird things.
These most adorable things, like when you just see how little they are and they're crawling all over everything. And I go down every night around dusk and look in the tank and play I Spy, see how many babies I can find. And I get endless enjoyment out of it. They're just so much fun.
So it's definitely different owning the babies than the adult ones. They can get to know that it's, oh my goodness, this big giant hand coming in here isn't going to hurt me. It's not going to remove me from my environment. It's going to keep me safe. And to me, that's exponentially different than there's a big giant hand, I'm going to run over here.
A really interesting thing that I noticed about my captive bred babies is that they do absolutely adore my larger crabs.
And I thought it was really interesting, the relationship that they had right away with the larger crabs. They each kind of adopted a buddy, like one of the old timers is a buddy. And I would see the same like 2 or 3 crabs around the big fella all the time. Like it was like the big crab was a planet and they were the moons, and they were just always kind of in a close proximity. And that happened for the first like month and a half. And then they kind of, but it was like each one had a mentor in the tank. And I just thought that was so darn cute. It was so adorable.
They're so cute. And then just knowing where they came from and how they were raised, how they were brought into life. I mean, it's like really, I don't know. It's really sweet. It's really tender. It's really awesome to be in part of something that's that big, And I mean, they're so cute. They're so adorable. They're tiny, and everybody loves babies, right? And then I mean, just seeing how much Mary had worked, how hard she worked on raising them.
I was really moved by Mary's story, and I wasn't sure that I wanted more crabs at that time, but I felt it was really, really important to be a part of it. And I felt compelled to be a part of it. I really wanted to get in on this historical thing that had happened. And, I have other exotics. And when I was a kid, I had like the chameleons, and they were all wild caught at that time. And they all came in with parasites, and they were sick, and they didn't live long, and they were very stressed. And it was horrendous. And then somebody figures out how to breed them, and everything is just elevated. Once they're being bred in captivity, then the whole industry is being elevated. You have healthy animals that were cared for, that have, aren't stressed. They didn't get ripped from their wild habitat. They've known nothing but these crazy apes who want to take care of them. And it just is so much more enjoyable.
We wanted to adopt captive bred babies to help change the industry and to help do our part as far as raising awareness of how crabs are captured out in the wild and how we are successfully able to breed in captivity now, and what a difference that would make to the industry and to these crabs that are, captured in the wild in such horrific conditions.
It's surreal. I mean, bringing any life into this world is pretty crazy, pretty amazing. And just knowing that it was considered impossible, and now there are hundreds of babies still waiting for homes is pretty great. Babies that didn't have to be ripped from their home or depleting natural resources of shells and just to import them. It means a lot more than just having a crafted red baby to own and to show people. I think it means a lot in regards to the crabs who are wild caught every day.
Favorite part of owning these babies is just being part of the history of it, because we are breaking new ground and trying to, like, for lack of a better word, mass produce these babies so that the ones in the wild can just be left alone and live free the way they're supposed to. I mean, we captive breed a lot of other animals, and so why not hermit crabs?
I think that, like, with what Mary is doing, she can't do it by herself. And even though, like, I only adopted 4 babies, that's still 4 babies that, you know, went into a home, and she can't do it by herself. She can't place all the babies just by us adopting from the groups. Like, it has to go bigger than that. So I do, like, and it has to start somewhere, and it starts with us.
I feel like I'm part of something so much bigger than myself, and that I can, with just this simple little thing, which is committing to, you know, adoption, and I can be part of changing the way that these crabs are treated in the wild. This tiny little part that I have, if we all get together and do it, then we've transformed the industry for these creatures and made it. I really want the pet industry to know how valuable these guys are. And it makes me so angry that they're a throwaway pet. That they're like the hardest pet I own, really. They're the one that takes the most commitment.
It breaks my heart, like, to think about that many crabs getting taken off of the beach and shoved into bags, and who knows how many weeks they're without food and water.
And I think that if we can get the world to see exactly what this process entails, what these little critters go through, they'll be able to hold more value in them and see them as the exotic pet that they are. Every little thing counts, you know? So definitely I would try to educate, because I was that classic hermit crab owner that had no idea. I did not know what I was getting into.
When I told them that I was a good bit of hermit crabs, and they are like, what? And they're like, mine died in 2 weeks. And I was like, well, I have to take care of them.
To have kids involved in it, because like you say, he talks to his friends, and that's where it starts. You know, not many adults go, I want a hermit crab, and, you know, go find them. It's usually, you know, kids are involved and want them. So, you know, if you can start at the root with the kids and them hearing from other kids how to take care of them properly, no, you can have them as pets for years, and you just have to take care of them.
They're not a throwaway pet, they're a commitment. And if we all get together, those of us who love these guys and see their value, if we all get together, we can show what they're worth.
I really see the captive bred baby industry like really taking off, but it's going to take a while to get to that point, because we have to educate enough of the other people that are out there. It helps that we do have these Facebook hermit crab groups. There's Instagram, Reddit, Tumblr, to put out the information, and of course YouTube, to put out the information, and hopefully that can reach as many people as possible, and more people will realize it's not such an impossible task to breed these anymore. It's still very difficult, but it's not impossible.
I think that each person who adopts, it might not seem like a big change right off, but the more people we can encourage to adopt, for sure, it's gonna change especially with the captive breds coming into boot. Like, people can stop getting them from pet stores. Pet stores will just have to either start getting them from our captive bred breeder and hopefully just end having to take them from the wild and just let those hermit crabs thrive in their environment.
I feel very honored to have some of the babies.
I got some of the initial batches, you know. I don't know. Like I said, I'm supporting further breeding projects by getting them. So
it's an exciting change. It's exciting and it's hopeful, and to be able to be a part of this whole process is just mind-blowing to me. I'm excited about it.
I feel very privileged and honored to play a part in, you know, the future of these babies. I love every aspect of it.
Captive breeding is not something really necessarily new. It's not a new idea per se. It's something that has been going on for years, actually. People in the hermit crab community have been working hard at captive breeding. However, it's just recently really taken off because, you know, Mother of All Crabs, Mary Akers, has had such success recently at being able to bring enough hermit crabs to land that they can then be adopted out in a sustainable way. And she's also made her whole process of breeding accessible to other at-home breeders, and is just like so caring and loving and knowledgeable and willing to share that knowledge so that we can actually have captive breeding make a difference in the hermit crab industry.
Being able to captive breed hermit crab means that it's possible for us to do differently and not just stick to the old method.
I just feel like there's so much room for growth and there's so much need that, you know, I just can't sit back and not do my part. I feel like I've learned a lot about them. I've learned to appreciate them as an animal, and I want to share that with other people. I think they will definitely, I feel like, gain value as an exotic animal when people actually learn everything that they do and how amazing that they are.
And spread the word. We need people to understand the complexity, the uniqueness, the incredible role that these animals play in the wild.
Whether you're a hermit crab owner or not, there is something you can do. Even if it's just sharing what you learned on social media and spread the education. You know, we spread silly videos about, you know, nonsense all the time. Share some education. You never know who's watching your feed. You never know who's going to see it. If you have hermit crabs, do the same thing, but post pictures of your crabs on. Don't just hide your crabs away in the Facebook group. Post them on your own timeline. You have no idea who else out there on your social media account might be considering hermit crabs, might have hermit crabs, and they may want to ask questions. It'll open you up to asking questions. You can share what you know. You can support Mary's breeding program and talk to people about how important captive breeding is.
There's a couple of ways that people can support the breeding program. They can adopt babies. That's probably the most direct route to supporting the breeding program. And that's not just because you are taking the babies off of my hands, which is helpful because I have a lot, but I don't know anyone who's adopted their babies and hasn't photobombed the internet with pictures, shared it on their Facebook, shared it on their Instagram, and that spreads the word. So it's adopting. If you can't adopt, you can still share other people's photos of these tiny, miraculous little creatures. So adopt, don't shop. That's our message. You can adopt a captive bred baby. You can adopt an unwanted crab that can't go back into the wild because he's been in captivity.
There are no words to prepare you for what you're about to experience and how amazing these little guys are.
We're all sort of learning together what they need, how best for them to survive and thrive. We're learning as we go. We're running to keep from falling. We're trying to figure it out, and I think we're doing a great job, really. I mean, all things considered, you know, a few people alone in their houses with their crabs working to change the industry doesn't get more grassroots than that. I love to try and put things into words, and I'm not even sure I know how to put this obsession into words. They're just, their whole essence speaks to me at a very deep level.